Witch hunts are a horrifying chapter in human history that is often ignored in the books of history. It is a chapter that shows how terrifying and cruel a superstition belief can become. These hunts spanned across continents and centuries, reaching their zenith during the late, medieval, and early modern periods in Europe and colonial America. The victims of these hunts were subjected to unimaginable torture and execution methods, often based on flimsy evidence or mere suspicion. The witch hunts trace their roots back to ancient times, but the phenomenon gained notorious prominence in the 15th century with the publication of Malleus Maleficarum in 1487 by Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger. This book, translated as The Hammer of Witches, served as a comprehensive guide for identifying, prosecuting, and punishing witches. It was widely believed that witches worshipped Satan, a notion driven by religious and social contexts. Witches were thought to have made pacts with the devil, granting them supernatural powers in exchange for their souls and eternal allegiance. They were believed to attend secret Sabbats, where they worshipped Satan through inverted Christian rituals, feasts, and orgies, presided over by the devil. Witches allegedly use familiars, animals like cats and toads, provided by Satan to assist in their magical practices. They were also thought to perform dark rituals and spells, including the infamous Black Mass, which parodied the Catholic Mass with prayers directed to Satan. Accusations often included sexual acts with the devil, like licking the ash of the devil, and even flying to Sabbats on broomsticks. It could be anyone, child, man, or woman, but it mostly affected women the most. The Catholic Church's endorsement of this text, combined with the social and political beliefs of the time, set the stage for widespread witch hunts. It was the time when Europe was plagued by wars, famines, and diseases, leading to widespread fear and uncertainty. In this volatile environment, accusations of witchcraft became a convenient scapegoat for misfortunes. The Catholic Church, in its efforts to maintain religious orthodoxy and combat heresy, contributed to the hysteria by endorsing the persecution of witches. This religious zeal was often local superstitions and folklore, further fueling the fire. Accusations of witchcraft typically began with simple suspicions or neighborly disputes. Women, especially those who were widowed, elderly, or otherwise marginalized, were easy targets. They were often accused of causing illness, death, or crop failures through supernatural means. Once accused, the fate of these women was almost always sealed, as the judicial processes were heavily biased against them. Women accused of witchcraft faced unimaginable atrocities. They were stripped of their dignity, subjected to public humiliation, and tortured in horrific ways. The accused were often subjected to swimming tests, where they were bound and thrown into water. If they floated, it was seen as proof of their guilt, as it was believed that witches would reject the baptismal water. If they sank and drowned, they were deemed innocent. But of course, they were already dead. Other methods included pricking the skin with needles to find insensitive spots, believed to be marks of the devil, and force-feeding them concoctions to induce vomiting, under the belief that witches would expel familiar spirits. Additionally, witch cakes made of rye meal and the urine of the afflicted were fed to dogs, under the belief that the dogs would reveal the witch. Confessions, often obtained under torture, were also considered irrefutable evidence. The punishments for those found guilty of witchcraft were brutal and varied. Torture was commonly used to extract confessions and included methods such as the rack, where the victim's limbs were stretched to the point of dislocation, and the thumb screws, which crushed the thumbs of the accused. Another gruesome method was the strapado, where the victim's hands were tied behind their back and they were hoisted into the air, causing excruciating pain as their shoulders dislocated. These tortures were often accompanied by psychological torment, as the accused were kept in appalling conditions and deprived of food and water. Public executions were the final, tragic end for many accused witches. Burning at the stake was a common method, as fire was believed to purify the soul. The accused were often tied to a wooden stake and surrounded by flammable materials. As the fire was lit, they suffered a slow and agonizing death. In other cases, hanging was used, with the accused left to dangle from a noose until they suffocated. The bodies of the executed were sometimes mutilated or displayed publicly as a warning to others. One of the most infamous episodes of witch hunts occurred in the late 16th and early 17th centuries in Europe, where thousands of women were executed. In Germany, the Würzburg and Bamberg witch trials were particularly brutal, resulting in the deaths of hundreds of women. In France, the Loudun witch trials saw the execution of several nuns and townspeople. England, too, witnessed its share of witch hunts, with the Pendle witch trials in 1612 being one of the most well-known cases. The Salem witch trials in colonial America are perhaps the most famous example of witch hunts. In 1692, in the Puritan settlement of Salem, Massachusetts, a group of young girls claimed to be possessed by the devil and accused several local women of witchcraft. The ensuing hysteria led to the arrest of more than 200 people, with 20 ultimately executed. The trials were marked by a lack of credible evidence, reliance on spectral evidence, and the use of torture to extract confessions. The Salem witch trials were a tragic culmination of fear, superstition, and religious fervor. The psychological impact on these women was horrible. The constant fear of accusation, the trauma of torture, and the stigma of being labeled a witch took a severe toll on their mental health. Many confessed to crimes they did not commit, simply to end their suffering. Families were torn apart, and entire communities were engulfed in paranoia and suspicion. Thankfully, the decline of witch hunts began in the late 17th century, as the Age of Enlightenment ushered in a new era of reason and scientific inquiry. The work of philosophers and intellectuals, such as Voltaire and John Locke, challenged the superstitions and irrational beliefs that underpinned the witch hunts. Legal reforms were implemented, reducing the use of torture and requiring more rigorous standards of evidence. By the 18th century, witch hunts had largely subsided, though isolated cases continued to occur. The legacy of the witch hunts, however, continued to haunt societies, serving as a grim reminder of the dangers of hysteria, superstition, and the persecution of marginalized groups. In modern times, the memory of witch hunts has been preserved in literature, film, and popular culture. They serve as a powerful symbol of the consequences of fear and ignorance, and a cautionary tale about the dangers of scapegoating and the abuse of power. The story of the witch hunts shows the capacity for cruelty in human societies, but it also underscores the importance of reason, justice, and the protection of human rights. In conclusion, the witch hunts were a period of intense persecution and suffering, particularly for women accused of witchcraft. Driven by fear, superstition, and social instability, these hunts resulted in the torture and execution of thousands of innocent people. Hope you liked the video. If you want to see more of such dark history and crime videos, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel by clicking the right circle. And if you want to explore more, left the left video.